The year is 1999. In the Oval Office, President Bill Clinton sits down to sign a document that will fundamentally rewrite the rules of global finance. He calls it a modernization for the 21st century. But in reality, he is dismantling a 66-year-old wall, a wall built with the blood, sweat, and tears of a generation that lived through the Great Depression.
I thank you all for coming to the formal ratification of a truly historic event, how we are making a fundamental and historic change in the way we operate our financial institutions.
To understand why this mattered, we have to go back to 1933. The world was in ruins. Thousands of banks had failed, wiping out the life savings of millions. It was chaos. Out of that darkness came the Glass-Steagall Act. It was a simple, brutal piece of legislation. It created a firewall. On one side, you had commercial banks, the safe place where you kept your paycheck and your kids' college fund. On the other side, you had investment banks, the high-stakes casino of Wall Street. Under Glass-Steagall, the bridge between them was burned. A bank could be a safe haven, or it could be a gambler, but it could never be both. This firewall wasn't just a random idea from politicians. It was the direct result of the Pecora hearings, a series of explosive Senate investigations led by Ferdinand Pecora. He dragged the titans of Wall Street before the cameras and exposed a world of deep corruption, tax evasion, and pool operations, where the elite manipulated stock prices for their own gain while the public suffered. Pecora showed the world that when your savings are used to fuel a banker's gamble, the house always wins until it doesn't. For 66 years, this wall held. Finance was boring, and that's exactly what made it stable. But in 1999, the wall came down. The commercial and investment sectors merged, creating two big-to-fail titans like Citigroup. The safe money was now officially in the casino. Then came September 11th, 2001. The world stopped. Fear gripped the markets. To prevent a total economic collapse, the Federal Reserve, led by Alan Greenspan, did something that would have seemed unthinkable just a few years prior. They initiated a paradigm shift. You see, for decades, interest rates lived in a different universe. From the 1970s through the 90s, rates typically fluctuated between 3 and 8%. In the early 80s, Paul Volcker even pushed them to a staggering 20% to break the back of inflation. These were the norms. But post 9/11 and leading into 2008, the world entered the era of ZIRP, zero interest rate policy. Suddenly, the cost of borrowing dropped to almost nothing. Money was, for the first time in history, essentially free. Whether you view this as a necessary rescue or a reckless experiment, it was a revolution. When money is free, the traditional rules of saving and investing evaporate. You can't make money by leaving it in a bank account. You have to take risks. You have to find a yield. And in the mid-2000s, all eyes turned to the safest asset people knew, the American home. This is where the invisible snowball starts to roll. With interest rates at historic lows, the demand for houses exploded, but the banks weren't just lending to people with steady jobs and good credit. They ran out of those borrowers quickly, so they moved on to subprime loans. These were ninja loans. No income, no job, no assets. But it wasn't just the poor who were caught in the mania. Even those with solid finances began to treat their homes like human ATMs. Because the value of houses seemed to go up every single month, people took out second and third mortgages. They took that equity and bought new cars, luxury boats, and exotic vacations. They spent money they hadn't earned on things they didn't need, all based on the hope that the house would always be worth more tomorrow. This created an artificial value increase, a bubble blown not by real capital or productivity, but by pure leverage. To keep the machine running, Wall Street invented the pizza analogy. Think of a mortgage as a slice of pizza. On its own, a single subprime slice is risky. If that homeowner stops paying, the slice is rotten. But the bankers realized they could take thousands of these slices, some good, some bad, and bake them into one giant pizza. This was a mortgage-backed security, or MBS. They told investors that even if a few slices were bad, the whole pizza was still delicious and safe. But they didn't stop there. What do you do with the rotten slices no one wants? You create a CDO, a collateralized debt obligation. It's like a layered cake. You take the worst, most rotten pieces of debt and you layer them at the bottom. Then you put some slightly better pieces in the middle and a thin layer of pristine white frosting on top. They called the top layer AAA, safe as government bonds, even though the foundation was built on rotting debt. And who was ensuring this madness? Enter firms like AIG. They started selling something called credit default swaps, or CDS. Think of it as an insurance policy on the pizza. If the pizza went bad, AIG would pay. The problem was that unlike real insurance, AIG wasn't required to hold any collateral. They weren't regulated. They sold these protection contracts like they were candy, collecting billions in premiums while assuming the underlying houses would never lose value. They took on trillions of dollars in risk with almost $0 in reserves. When the defaults finally hit, AIG didn't have the money to pay. They weren't just a company. They were the glue holding the global financial system together. When that glue dried up, the world began to fracture. In 2007 and 2008, the music stopped. Interest rates began to rise, and the free money era hit a wall. People couldn't pay their mortgages, and the AAA began to crumble. Because of derivatives, every bank in the world was connected. A default in a suburb in Florida could, and did, bankrupt a bank in Germany or a pension fund in Norway. We said never again. We promised to learn. But look at where we are today. The game has started again, but the packaging has changed. Enter buy now, pay later, or BNPL. It's being marketed as a convenient way to shop, but it is the same shadow debt. These small loans are once again being packaged into asset-backed securities, ABS, and sold to investors. But there is a terrifying difference this time. In 2008, even if the loans were bad, there was still a physical asset, a house or a car, something the bank could eventually seize and sell. With BNPL, people are taking out credit for consumables, Uber rides, Foodora deliveries, clothes, and makeup. If those loans go into default, what is the underlying asset? There is nothing. You can't repossess a half-eaten burrito or a worn-out T-shirt. It is pure phantom debt, rising on 0% interest and hidden from traditional credit checks. We are building another AI AAA cake, and this time the ingredients are even more fragile. So, are we doomed? Is this cycle of debt and collapse our only future? History actually offers a reason for optimism. There are other paths. We just need to remember them. Take the story of colonial scrip in early America. Before the colonies were forced to use British pounds, they created their own medium of exchange. It wasn't borrowed from a central bank. It was issued by the community's own land banks. When a farmer needed money to expand, he didn't take a loan from a bank that created the money as a debt to itself. He went to the colonial land bank, used his land as collateral, and received interest-free scrip. That scrip was valued because it was accepted for taxes and backed by the actual production of the community. Benjamin Franklin noted that this system led to a level of prosperity and full employment that made the colonies the envy of the world. It was a production-based economy, not a debt-based one. When England saw this, they passed the Currency Acts to ban colonial scrip and forced the colonies back into debt-based British money. Franklin later argued that this, not just a tax on tea, was the true trigger for the American Revolution. We've seen other flashes of this. Abraham Lincoln's greenbacks, issued directly by the Treasury to fund the Civil War without paying 30% interest to foreign banks. We saw JFK's attempt with Executive Order 11,110. These were moments where humanity touched a different way of existing, a way where money serves the people rather than the people serving the debt. The 2008 crisis wasn't an accident. It was the logical conclusion of a system designed to prioritize debt over production. But as we've seen, other options have always existed. In our upcoming videos, we will dive deeper into these paths. We will explore how we can transition away from a debt-based society and toward a system built on real value, real production, and true financial sovereignty. The wall fell once before. Maybe it's time we build a new one, not of stone, but of understanding. See you in the next chapter. If you like this video, I hope it's not too much to ask for a quick like and subscription. Take care, friends.